Hi there. My name is Maren, and for as long as I can remember, I tried to be the daughter they could be proud of. But when my sister betrayed me in the worst way, my family didn't stand by me. They stood behind her. That night, something inside me broke for good. I realized home wasn't a place. It was a battle I was tired of losing. Why would a family protect the one who did the most harm? Before we dive into the story, tell me, have you ever felt like the outsider in your own family? Let's talk in the comments. My family's betrayal, the night everything changed. The house smelled like burnt coffee. It was a small detail, something no one else would have noticed, but I did. I always noticed the wrong things. The smells, the cracks, the warnings no one else heeded. I knew even before I stepped into the kitchen that something was off. The dining table, usually cluttered with junk mail and forgotten groceries, had been cleared. 4 chairs, perfectly arranged. My father, Harlan, sat stiffly at one end, pretending to read the sports page. My mother, Verna, perched like a hawk at the other. Kendra was already there, a soft, deliberate smile playing on her lips. I dropped my purse by the door and waited. The silence stretched, pulling at the edges of my skin until I wanted to scream. "You're late," Verna said, not looking at me. "I didn't know there was a meeting," I replied, my voice too casual, too loud in the weighted room. Kendra tilted her head. "We needed to talk, as a family." I sat down. I shouldn't have, but I did. Some part of me, the part that still believed in second chances, wanted to hear them out. Verna's mouth tightened. "Kendra has told us everything. About Jonas. About the things you said." I blinked. Jonas. The name hit like a slap. "Kendra didn't do anything wrong," Verna continued, her voice syrupy and sharp. "You're the one who turned this into something ugly." Kendra cast her eyes downward, a performance I had seen 100 times before. The innocent victim, the good daughter. I looked at Harlan, searching for something. Doubt, hesitation, anything. But he just turned a page, eyes never lifting. "You need to apologize," Verna said, slicing the air between us. "You need to make this right." I laughed. A hollow sound, brittle in the stillness. "Apologize? For what?" "For overreacting," she snapped. "For hurting your sister." The word sister tasted sour in my mouth. "Family is forgiveness," Verna said, and for the first time I realized how that phrase had been used to chain me to them. It was never about love. It was about control. I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out. What was the point? Their minds were made up long before I walked through the door. Images flickered in my mind. Kendra pushing me down the stairs when we were kids. Verna blaming me for crying. Harlan grounding me when Kendra stole my favorite dress and wore it to a party. A lifetime of small betrayals, stitched together like a quilt too heavy to carry anymore. I stood up. The chair scraped the floor in a scream. "I'm not sorry," I said, voice calm, final. "Not this time." Verna gasped as if I had cursed. Harlan finally looked up, but only to frown. Kendra's mouth parted in mock hurt. I turned on my heel and walked down the hall to my room. Inside, I locked the door, leaned against it, and slid to the floor. For a moment, I just sat there, feeling the familiar weight of despair. But then, something shifted. I got up. I pulled a duffel bag from the closet and started packing. No tears, no panic, just a cold, steady movement. Somewhere deep inside, a tether snapped, quiet but irreversible. I wasn't running this time. I was leaving. The invisible daughter, buried beneath chores. The plates clattered against each other as I stacked them, one by one, under the sharp fluorescent light of the kitchen. In the living room, Kendra lounged on the couch, laughing at some sitcom rerun. Verna's voice floated from somewhere behind me, reminding me to hurry up before dessert. No thank you. No acknowledgement. Just expectation. Dinner at our house wasn't loud arguments or slammed doors. It was the heavy kind of cruelty, the kind that sat quietly in your chest and grew roots. It was in the way Kendra never lifted a finger, and yet was praised for her charm, while I, elbows deep in dish soap, was invisible even when I tried my hardest to be seen. I dried my hands on a thin, fraying towel and watched as Harlan turned the page of his newspaper without glancing up. In that house, labor wasn't love. It was owed. At first, when I was younger, I thought if I did everything perfectly, if the plates gleamed, if the floorboards shone, they would notice. They would smile. They would love me the way they loved Kendra, effortlessly, without obligation. But the better I performed, the more they expected. Praise was a currency reserved for her. I set a fresh glass of soda next to Kendra, who didn't even pause her laughter to thank me. Her eyes flicked toward me, amused, as if daring me to resent her. One night I slipped. I muttered just under my breath that I was tired, that maybe Kendra could help. The room went silent. Verna's head snapped around so fast I thought she might hurt herself. Her mouth was tight, a thin white line of rage. "If you're so tired," she said coldly, "then you can clean the backyard this week, every day. Maybe that will teach you to appreciate what you have." I wanted to explain, to apologize, to take it back, but the words stuck like gravel in my throat. Harlan never looked up from his paper. Kendra sipped her soda and smiled. The backyard was a jungle of weeds and rusted toys we hadn't played with in years. Every evening after homework, I raked and pulled and shoveled, blistering my palms until they bled under my gloves. No one noticed. No one cared. Some nights, standing ankle-deep in dirt, I would watch the lights flicker on in other houses, imagining mothers calling children in for hot cocoa, fathers checking homework, siblings fighting over TV remotes. I wondered if, somewhere out there, another girl like me was realizing her family didn't love her either. Not really. They loved the idea of her obedience, her silence. I stopped hoping after that. I stopped asking. Love here was conditional. Love here was earned by how well you disappeared. At night, lying on my narrow bed, I would stare at the ceiling, tracing invisible patterns with my eyes. Kendra's laughter would drift down the hallway, sharp and easy, while my own dreams shrank smaller and smaller, like paper burning from the edges inward. One night, I pulled back the old sticky window in my bedroom and looked up at the stars. They seemed so far away, tiny, cold, unreachable. Still, I whispered to them, "One day, I won't be here anymore." And for the first time, the words didn't feel like a wish. They felt like a promise. The day they forgot me, a graduation without a family. The morning was humid, the kind of sticky warmth that clung to your skin and made you feel heavier than you were. I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing the creases out of my graduation robe, adjusting the cap until it sat just right on my hair. My reflection stared back at me, not nervous, not excited, just quietly hopeful. Today was supposed to mean something. It was supposed to be proof that I had made it, that I was worth celebrating. I lingered by the door, clutching my program, waiting for the sound of car keys, for Verna's familiar yell to hurry up. But the house stayed still, lazy in its indifference. At the ceremony, I sat with the other graduates, my eyes scanning the bleachers. So many parents waved balloons, held homemade signs, their faces lit up with pride. I smiled at a few strangers, pretending they were there for me. The ceremony dragged on. Names were called, applause erupting like tiny fireworks. Each time a name sounded close to mine, my chest tightened, hoping maybe I had just missed them in the crowd. When my name was called, I stood, walked across the stage, took my diploma with hands that didn't tremble, but only because they had already learned to stop expecting too much. As I returned to my seat, I caught sight of them. Verna and Harlan slipping into the bleachers at the very back. No flowers, no camera, no smiles. They looked bored. Irritated even, as if attending was some chore they had been forced to complete. My throat burned, but I kept my face neutral. I had learned that trick years ago. Afterward, in the parking lot, when other families gathered for photos and hugs, I approached them. I asked, timidly, too timidly, if we could go for dinner, just something small. Verna shook her head briskly. "We don't have time for that. Kendra's pageant is coming up, and she needs new shoes." She said it like a fact, not an apology. Like I should have known better than to ask. I nodded, swallowing down the disappointment until it felt like a stone lodged beneath my ribs. They walked ahead of me to the car, arguing about what color dress Kendra should wear. I trailed behind, invisible once again. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt. I paused, looking back at the school, at the gathering of proud families still laughing and posing for pictures. I realized then that no matter what milestones I reached, no matter how hard I tried, I would always be standing alone in parking lots like this, waiting for people who would never truly see me. A small voice inside, the one I usually ignored, whispered louder this time, "You need to get out." As the car engine revved and they barked at me to hurry up, I made a vow. Quiet but searing. Next time something important happens in my life, they won't even know. When shame became a celebration. The smell of grilled burgers clung to the humid air, mixing with the metallic tang of cheap folding chairs and the plastic scent of dollar store decorations. Balloons bobbed lazily above the backyard, and fairy lights tangled awkwardly around the fence posts, trying to make everything look more festive than it was. It was my 16th birthday, and for a foolish, fleeting moment, I had let myself believe that maybe this time, things would be different. Maybe today I would feel like more than just a fixture in the background. Relatives gathered with lukewarm smiles, exchanging gossip and lukewarm hugs. Verna fluttered around refilling cups, Harlan nursed a beer by the grill, and Kendra floated through the crowd in a sundress so bright it hurt to look at. She shone, as always, while I stood in the corners, invisible. The time came for presents. Everyone gathered near the patio as Verna announced loudly, "Let's see what our birthday girl got." I smiled, my cheeks aching already. I pulled at the crinkled paper on the largest box first, feeling the familiar twist of hope in my chest. Maybe it would be a camera, a set of sketchbooks. Anything that hinted someone, anyone, had listened to me over the years. The paper fell away to reveal a spa kit. Not just any spa kit. One specifically labeled for brightening and lightening skin tone, complete with a weight loss tea set and a coupon for a beauty boot camp. I blinked, frozen, while the world tilted slightly under my feet. Kendra let out a loud theatrical gasp. "Oh my God, Maren, it's time you start taking care of yourself, right?" Laughter erupted around me like fireworks. Verna's high-pitched giggle, Harlan's grunt of amusement, my cousins nudging each other with gleeful smirks. I smiled. I actually smiled. It stretched my lips painfully tight across my teeth. I hugged the box to my chest as if it was something precious, something wanted. Inside, something small and vital crumbled to dust. I posed for the pictures they insisted on taking. I tilted my head at just the right angle. I blew out the candles on my cake with a grin so wide it made my cheeks hurt worse than any slap ever could. I made a wish as the candles flickered out, but not for happiness, not for love. I wished for numbness. I watched them devour the cake, watched Kendra preen for compliments, watched Verna bask in the approval of our relatives for throwing such a thoughtful party. And I knew, with a clarity that seared like cold fire, that this wasn't my family. Not really. They were a theater troupe performing love, and I was the stagehand expected to stay behind the curtain. Later that night, lying on my bed, the spa kit tucked neatly in the corner like an accusation, I stared at the ceiling until the room blurred. They didn't deserve my wishes. They didn't deserve me. When dreams were not allowed, I had never felt so alive as the day I saw my name on the cast list taped outside the auditorium doors. Maren, supporting role. My heart had lifted in my chest like a balloon finally freed from a careless grasp. For weeks I practiced my lines in secret, whispering them into the dark while the rest of the house slept. I traced my finger over the words, committing them to memory, tasting each one like it was honey on my tongue. I dared to dream, even knowing that dreams had sharp edges in this house. One evening, Verna stormed into my room without knocking. In her hand, crumpled and sweaty, was my audition form. "What is this nonsense?" she demanded. I stammered, tried to explain, but the words shriveled under her glare. "Acting won't pay your bills, Maren. Focus on real life," she said, tossing the paper onto my bed like it was garbage. From the living room, Harlan's voice drifted in, lazy and bored. "Listen to your mother." And just like that, the fragile hope I had built in whispers and half-lit dreams crumbled into dust. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I folded the audition form carefully and tucked it between the pages of my journal. as if burying it would hurt less than tearing it apart. Weeks passed. I stopped practicing lines. I stopped whispering dreams. I threw myself into chores and homework with the mechanical dedication of someone waiting for time to pass. One Saturday morning, passing by the kitchen, I heard Verna's voice. "She doesn't need that savings account anyway," she said, laughing lightly. "Kendra has real potential. She deserves a shot at something bigger." I froze behind the corner. "She'll never use it. Better to invest it where it matters," Verna continued, as if I was an invisible ghost haunting my own house. The money I had painstakingly saved, babysitting, tutoring, scrimping every birthday dollar, was gone. Given to Kendra, who had decided she wanted to be a yoga instructor now. I pressed my forehead against the cool wall and let the betrayal sink deep into my bones, so deep it would never fully leave. Later that night, I sat at my desk. I didn't cry. Not this time. I pulled out my notebook, opened to a blank page, and wrote the word, enough, again and again, until the paper threatened to tear under the pressure of my pen. I glanced at the audition script still tucked neatly at the back of my desk. Without hesitation, I folded it into a tiny square, walked to the kitchen, dropped it into the trash can. I didn't flinch. I didn't look back. Some dreams are not taken from you. They are stolen. And sometimes you have to be the one to burn the ashes before someone else does it for you. The shattering of first love. Jonas was the first person who made me feel like I wasn't invisible. In a world that treated me like background noise, he had noticed. He had smiled at me across the library table, passed me clumsy notes during study hall, made jokes only I understood. For a long time, I clung to that attention like a lifeline. In the hollow spaces of my house, where affection was rationed like air, Jonas became my oxygen. I told myself he was different. He wasn't like them. I was wrong. I found out on a Thursday. It was stupidly simple. His phone buzzed on the coffee table when he left the room. I wasn't the kind of girl who snooped. But that night, something told me to look. Maybe the silence in his voice when we spoke lately. Maybe the way he smiled too easily when I asked about Kendra. I opened his messages and the truth cracked the world beneath my feet. There they were. Dozens of texts. Kendra, laughing about how uptight I was. Jonas, joking that she was a breath of fresh air. Plans to meet behind my back. Private jokes. Secrets. I couldn't breathe. When Jonas came back into the room, I held out the phone like it was something filthy I needed to be rid of. He looked at the screen, then at me, and didn't even bother to look ashamed. "You were too serious," he said with a shrug. "Kendra's just fun." The word fun lodged in my throat like broken glass. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just left. The cold night air slapped my face as I walked home alone. The stars overhead were sharp and disinterested, just like my family, just like Jonas. For a foolish hour, I still thought maybe Verna would understand. Maybe this time she would pull me into her arms, tell me I deserved better, that it wasn't my fault. She was in the kitchen when I arrived, flipping through a magazine. I stood there waiting, trying to force the words out, my heart cracking in my chest. Finally, I said it. "Jonas, he's with Kendra." Verna didn't even blink. She didn't gasp, didn't rise to her feet in outrage. Instead, she sighed like I had told her the weather was cloudy. "You're stronger than she is," she said, her eyes never lifting from the page. "She needs him more." And there it was, the final truth, laid bare without apology. I was never meant to be loved in this family, only used, endured, forgotten. Something inside me split cleanly down the middle. I wasn't crying anymore. That night, alone in my room, I gathered the pictures Jonas and I had taken, the selfies, the Polaroids from the fair, the blurry ones where we were laughing. I deleted every message, unfollowed every account, erased every song he had sent me. When I was finished, I sat there in the dark, feeling hollow and strangely light. If they could forget me this easily, I could forget them harder. And maybe, just maybe, I could start remembering myself. The warning I couldn't ignore. The message came on a Tuesday, just as the afternoon sun slipped behind the buildings and the streets grew sleepy. I almost didn't check my phone. I almost let it sit there, vibrating uselessly on the kitchen counter. But something, a tug low in my gut, made me reach for it. "Kendra's looking for you." 5 words. From Silas. Words that hit harder than any punch. I stared at the screen, feeling the familiar pit form deep in my stomach. For a moment, the walls of my apartment seemed to close in, the once comforting hum of the fridge now sounding like a warning siren. I hadn't heard from Silas in years. Not really. A few holiday texts. A half-hearted comment on a photo once. He had always been the ghost sibling, haunting the edges, never standing firm. For him to reach out now meant something was brewing. I set the phone down gently, as if afraid it might explode. Outside the window, the world looked deceptively calm. Children played on the sidewalk, the ice cream truck chimed down the street. But inside me, a different soundtrack played. The low, menacing hum of old wounds vibrating to life. I leaned against the kitchen counter, breathing slow, measured breaths, and forced myself to remember. The escape hadn't been dramatic. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just a bag packed quietly in the dark and a whispered goodbye to the life that had never really been mine. I rebuilt everything from scraps, new job, new friends, a new version of myself stitched together from hope and stubbornness. I had dared to believe the past was over, that if I kept walking forward, it would stay buried behind me. I should have known better. I called Silas. His voice cracked like old paper when he answered. "They're talking," he said without preamble. "They think if they guilt you enough, you'll come back." I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. "Come back for what?" "To fix everything," he muttered. "To be the good daughter again, the lost lamb returning home." I closed my eyes, pressing the heel of my hand hard against my forehead. I could picture it already. Verna's crocodile tears, Harlan's heavy sighs, Kendra's manufactured remorse, the invitations disguised as ambushes, the photos posted online, painting me as the wayward soul, finally seeing the light. "They're setting it up through family friends," Silas added. "Old neighbors, cousins, everyone you barely remember. They'll make it look like you're the one who's cold if you don't respond." Of course they would. They didn't miss me. They missed controlling me. The anger came quietly, steady and sure, like a tide rising too fast to run from. "I'm not going back," I said. Not to him, not to myself, just into the air, a declaration the walls needed to hear. I thanked Silas, though I wasn't sure what for. Maybe for confirming what I already knew but hadn't wanted to admit. After the call ended, I stood there for a long time, clutching the cold metal edge of the counter, staring into nothing. They were coming for me, not with fists, but with open arms and poisoned smiles. I wasn't the same girl who once folded herself small enough to fit in their boxes. I wasn't theirs anymore. I walked to the window, pushing it open, letting the breeze rush in, cool and sharp. The sky above was bruised purple, the first stars barely blinking into existence. Let them come. I'm not that girl anymore. The day I finally said no. The messages started pouring in just after sunrise, breaking through the soft quiet of my apartment like a fist against glass. One after another, desperate, pleading, drowning in exclamation points and half-formed apologies. "Maren, please, I need you. I have no one else." Kendra's words crawled across my screen, each one sticky with the same syrupy manipulation she had perfected since we were children. She painted herself as abandoned, misunderstood, the poor sister left behind by a cruel world. She begged for sisterly loyalty like it was a favor she was owed. I stared at the messages, my coffee growing cold in my hands. The part of me that once would have rushed in, desperate to fix things, felt eerily still now. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop downtown, the same one I used to sneak away to when home became unbearable, the same place I once dreamed a better life could start. She was already there when I arrived, perched at a table by the window, her face buried in trembling hands. For a moment, seeing her so small and broken, my chest ached in an old, familiar way. But then she looked up, and I saw it, the calculation behind the tears. She launched into her story, voice thick with desperation. Life hadn't been kind, bills piling up, friends disappearing, opportunities slipping through her fingers like sand. She needed me, She needed family. I let her talk. I let her pour her sadness across the table between us like it might drown me if I weren't careful. But I didn't move. I didn't lean in. I didn't offer to save her. When the sympathy she tried to manufacture didn't hook me, Kendra shifted. The mask dropped in an instant, replaced by cold, familiar cruelty. "If you don't help me," she hissed, her voice low, venomous, "I'll make sure everyone knows who you really are. Selfish, heartless, abandoning your own blood." Her threat hung between us, heavy and stale. My hands trembled, but not from fear. Not this time. I leaned forward, my voice steady, almost gentle. "If you do that, Kendra, it will say more about you than it ever could about me." Her face contorted, the tears drying into something mean and ugly. I stood up, the chair scraping back against the floor with a finality that made heads turn. I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. I didn't look back. Outside, the air was crisp, the sun just beginning to climb the sky. I filled my lungs with it, felt it sharpen the edges inside me that had dulled for too long. I knew she would retaliate. I knew the rumors would come, but for the first time, I didn't care. Let them come. I'm done playing their game. Walking into my own light. The first whisper reached me at the grocery store, carried on the careless breath of two women in the produce aisle. I wasn't supposed to hear it, wasn't meant to be standing there, weighing tomatoes like a normal person, but I did. "Ungrateful," one said, stuffing lettuce into a plastic bag. "After everything her poor family did for her." I stood there, fingers tightening around the smooth skin of a tomato, feeling the old familiar sting. But it didn't burn the way it once would have. It barely even warmed the surface of my skin. Later, it showed up online. Subtle digs from distant relatives, passive-aggressive posts about family loyalty and the dangers of pride. Photos of Kendra smiling through her struggles, the perfect martyr. Whispers turned into rumors, rumors into gospel. Maren, the selfish daughter, the cold sister, the heartless one. I sat at my kitchen table, phone buzzing beside a half-empty cup of tea, and let the words roll off me like rain on oiled glass. Silas called. He sounded tired, the way someone does when they're trying to climb out of a pit they helped dig. "I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking. "I should have done more. Should have said something sooner." I leaned back in my chair, watching the ceiling fans spin lazily above. "You don't owe me anything," I told him, and meant it. Silas had been a product of the same house. The same rot, just carved differently by it. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at him. Not even at Verna or Harlan. Anger required energy, and I had decided I was done feeding them. I had chosen to feed myself instead. I looked around my small apartment, the worn sofa Jonas and I picked out together, the mismatched frames Delilah insisted we use because perfect is boring, the faint smell of Warren's hand-carved cedar shelf. It wasn't the grand family home I used to dream about. It was better. It was real. Family wasn't blood. It was the people who showed up when you cried ugly tears, the ones who didn't turn your pain into a performance. I closed my eyes, breathing in the scent of home, real home, and let the past settle behind me like dust after a storm. Some wounds would never fully heal. Some memories would always ache like old scars on cold mornings. But I could walk forward, even with the limp. A few weeks later, Jonas and I attended a community fundraiser. Nothing fancy, just music, plastic chairs, lemonade too sweet it made your teeth hurt. But when I walked through those doors, holding his hand, heads turned. Maybe some of them believed the stories. Maybe they all did. It didn't matter. I wasn't there to defend myself anymore. I was there to live. I caught my reflection in the window. A woman standing tall, not a girl waiting to be chosen. I smiled, small but sure. I am no longer running away. I am walking towards something better. Sometimes the hardest thing you can do is choose yourself over the people who taught you to doubt your worth. I spent years chasing approval from those who only knew how to take. I thought if I worked harder, stayed quieter, became smaller, maybe they'd see me. Maybe they'd love me the way I needed. But the truth is, real family isn't built on obligation or guilt. It's built on choice, on respect, on showing up even when it's messy. It's built on love that doesn't have to be earned. Walking away wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of living on my own terms. Even if the scars stay, they are reminders that I survived what was meant to break me. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you thought would always be your home? What did you learn about yourself on the other side? I would love to hear your story. If this video touched your heart, comment 1 below, or share where you're watching from. And if you didn't connect with it, let me know why. Your voice matters here. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next journey we take together. See you in the next one.